Light the lamp with BetMGM, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Sign up and use bonus code JERSEY200 when you bet $10 on any NHL team to win. If any team scores a goal in any game, you'll win $200 in free bets. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. 21 years of age or older to wager. New Jersey only. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable free bets or site credit. Free bets expire 7 days from issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hey everyone, welcome to The Final Four is Not on the Schedule. I'm your host Eric, alongside with expert analyst Rod. Thanks for joining us on the best MSU basketball podcast featuring an in-depth recruiting, game matchup, and post-game analysis. We dive deep to give you the best tools to enjoy the Spartans and impress your friends and family. Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod and our very special guest, assistant coach for Michigan State basketball, Tom Kelley. Before we start, I just want to remind you that we are having an Ask Me Anything show in probably a week or so. And so there's still time to get questions if you want. This is probably my last reminder since we've already had quite a few questions already. And so it can be basketball related, but anything you want to ask Rod or me is fine. And so just send those along to us. You can go to our webpage at thefinalfoursnotontheschedule.com. You can, or just email me, Eric at tffinots.com. All right. Well, we're Thomas Kelley. He is a graduate of Union High School in Grand Rapids, town where I live now. He played at Michigan State from 1994 through 1999 with 1 year where he had a medical red shirt.
Yeah.
He was played in the Final Four in 1999. And then he played internationally for 15 years all over Israel, Amsterdam, Turkey, Austria, Finland, Hungary. I'm sure I missed some places too.
All right.
He then decided to go to the coaching ranks and became a grad assistant for Tom Izzo from 2016 to 18 until he joined the Western Michigan staff and became an assistant coach from 2018 to 22, and then came back to East Lansing and joined the coaching ranks at Michigan State this summer. I guess it was probably like June or July or something like that, right?
June, yeah.
Yeah. So much for coming on. Welcome to the show.
Man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, we're going to talk about a bunch of different things with you. It's a real pleasure. All our fans here obviously want to find out anything they can about Michigan State people, so especially a former player. And so let's talk about that initially. You came from the Judd era. So what was it that sold you in Michigan State? What brought you to Michigan State and to the program from Grand Rapids?
Well, to be honest, I always tell people this, I probably knew I was going to go to Michigan. I wanted to go to Michigan State when I was in like sixth grade. Started back, my sixth grade coach, school coach, he took us on a tour to Lansing, and he also went to Michigan State too. As a police officer that went to Michigan State too. So we came down here and took me to Lansing. And, as a kid, I thought that was the greatest thing ever to come down here and experience that. But also, with my parents, my mom always was on me about, not going far away. I want you to go to Michigan State, but it's your choice, all that kind of stuff. But yeah. And, then being a Magic Johnson fan, Steve Smith fan growing up, it was just, I don't know. I mean, like I said, being around that as a school kid in elementary, and it just stuck with me, man. Then, next thing you know, here I am. I'm playing against Lansing Sexton as a sophomore. And Sadie Washington, coach of Michigan, we had some good battles. We ended up beating them my sophomore year. Then I remember it was on a Friday. That Monday, Coach Izzo was in the gym. And the rest was history. Coach Izzo was assistant then. And so, I think I've known Coach Izzo since I was like 14, 15 years old. So we go way back. So it started from there. But I always had Michigan State in my blood, to be honest. I genuinely did. It was the first school that grew on me, and the rest is history.
Now, you mentioned Coach Izzo being your primary recruiter among the assistants. Mm-hmm. I've heard Mateen Cleaves say this many, many times, that when he was being recruited by Coach Izzo, part of the pitch, even then, was always about going to a Final Four, winning the national championship at Michigan State. Was that the same message you were getting? You were a little earlier than Mateen.
Yeah.
Was that the same message you were getting from him even then?
Yeah, well, because it was already like people always say, of course I played 1 year under Judd, but I knew Judd was leaving. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't sign up for a coach that's gonna have 1 year. So I knew we all knew Coach Izzo was gonna be the coach in waiting. It was already stated and known. But he's always talked about winning, always talked about those same things, want to win, want to build something special and all that. He's always been about that. And it's just funny that it's crazy you say Mateen Cleaves was my guy. It's just that's what it was about. And that's what and coach has stuck with it through the whole time. That's what we built on. That's what he's always talked about from back then. I don't want to age myself, but back then.
Right. Right. Now you mentioned playing your first year, which was Judd's last year.
Yes.
And that was a really good team. A lot of our listeners are old enough to remember Sean Respert, Eric Snow, Fire and Ice, all those guys. Kind of a disappointing end, but a great regular season.
It was a great one.
What were the differences? I know you only got the Judd experience for 1 year, but again, those of us who are old enough to remember know that he was a unique guy as a coach. Yeah. What were the differences like in playing that year under Judd versus what came later in your career under Coach Izzo? Was there much of a difference?
Not really. What the difference was, to me, both of them have their comedian ways. I mean, they are fun to listen to and talk because Judd to me was very comical. He always has good one-liners, good things to say. But he was at the end, so it was like a fun ride at that time. And for me, I was the only freshman on that team because I was the only incoming freshman, so I didn't have nobody to take my lumps with. So I had to deal with carrying the camera equipment and a lot of that stuff on my own. So that's a different story. But no, to be honest, it was not a lot. I mean, you could just tell what coach getting a job. Everything ramped up, the energy ramped up. The different, the seriousness, the things, because that last year with Judd, it was a veteran-led team. We could talk about Sean, Eric Snow, Jamie Fike was older, you had Quentin Brooks, all these guys were older. It's an older group, so it's a little bit more laxed, a little bit more, it really was a player-led team. And when we got with Coach Izzo, what you want to build to a player-led team, we was a coach-led team which we kind of had to be because he was trying to implement his ways, implement what he wanted, and had to change some things because he was just getting started, whereas Judd was on the back end. So that's what a big difference was. So you get a last year, it was fun, then all of a sudden, boom, it ramps up. So that was the big difference because coach was ready to go as soon as the wheels was running as soon as he touched the floor.
Right.
So you played a long time internationally. We just 15 years.
Yeah.
What was it like playing overseas and living overseas, and was basketball a lot different than it was back in college? I mean, what are the differences that you noticed?
Well, the difference was, the first thing was the 24-second shot clock. Things like that, the rules of, I remember how they called it traveling and things like that. It's kind of like a different sport in a lot of ways, to be honest with you, because it was like, I remember first time I caught an outlet pass playing point guard and I tried to dribble and nobody around me and I got a travel called on me. And I'm like, what is this? But learning to slow things down, how they see things, how they call the game. But, that's a whole different thing. But the one thing, about Europe, I knew coming out of Michigan State, I knew I had a lot of basketball left, the injuries I battled. So, but it's like going to Europe, it was actually, being honest with you, I was blessed to go to some fortunate situations, but it's like reinventing myself kind of, it's like reinventing myself. Now I can, you get the ball in your hands, you're playing. And like I told Coach, I said this in a meeting the other day, and I didn't want to say that to Coach. I wanted to say it more privately, but I said, we had a meeting with some players and stuff. And I just was like, when I got to playing pro ball, a lot of what I gained from Michigan State, being a leader, being accountable, being, a lot of the work ethic things I've had helped me be a pro for a long time. You know what I'm saying? That's how I was, the discipline of it. That's the one thing I love about the job and the sport playing a sport is the discipline. People don't understand, because you have to live a certain lifestyle to last this long and do what you do. So the lifestyle I gained from Michigan State, which I never understood it with Coach, we fought it in the beginning because, like I said, that's a change. But once I bought in, that helped me become a better pro, being honest with you. So I just think, getting over there and getting to Europe, and then it's like, honestly, it's pressure because, being a foreigner, when they come to that stat sheet, man, they're going to talk about the coach. The first thing they're going to look at, they can say what they want, is going to look at what the foreigners do, because you're there for a reason. So if you're performing and you're doing well, it's cool. If you're not, I'd have been in the layup line and you look up in the crowd when I was in Israel, and one of the power forwards I played with, they had us a replacement in the stands. So it's like, ooh,
Wow.
It can get tough. It can get tough for you. So, and that kept me always to stay in shape. And like I said, a lot of things I learned from college, I really bought into that, and it helped me become a better pro.
Now, you speaking about that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think most all of those leagues have just a limited number of slots on their roster they can use for foreigners, right? So
yes, they do.
So you have to produce.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, I'm glad you said that, because that is the truth. Some countries are more than others. Like, being in Hungary may have 5. Some, like in Germany, may have 6 or 7. Some countries you only have 3. You have a lot of things. A lot of things like that. So that put pressure on you. That's why I would say, stats don't matter. No, stats don't matter, but in a lot of cases it does. But it's how you get your numbers. Like I used to tell being playing so long, playing with a lot of young guys, when I was getting older and playing with some other foreigners, like, hey, you don't have to force your numbers. They happen. Because when you force it, it don't look good and all that. You don't want to look at selfish, because, now you're talking about the barriers where you don't talk the same kind of language that they talk, especially the earlier half of my career. Everybody can speak English, of course. Early in my career is a little harder, so body language and things like that matter. So if you act aggressively, in some Europeans, it can be a standoffish. So you have to learn how to carry yourself. You have to learn how to, be positive and things like that. And like you say, you will get your numbers because, but don't be selfish, because you got to keep them involved. So it's just a lot of little things you got to learn dealing with playing in Europe that people just don't understand. They just go over there and score and play. It don't work like that, because then you catch yourself on bad teams. You catch yourself, your money's not improving. You're not getting better situations, and you stuck, or you're not furthering your career.
I have not had the pleasure of being able to attend any European professional games in person, but from what I've seen on television, some of those leagues, those crowds get pretty crazy.
Yes.
How did it compare to playing on the road in the Big Ten, let's say?
That helps. Like, I mean, sure. Another thing of being fortunate, I was able to steal a win out of every team in the Big Ten. So on the road, I'm talking about. So
right.
I won at Mackey Arena, which is tough. I won at Indiana my senior year. When Bobby Knight was there, and you talking about loud. I remember that week, because I remember that week they had AJ Guyton, who was tough. Much respect for him. AJ Guyton was tough. And I remember we practiced that week all week with the scoreboard on and playing loud music. So we had to learn how to talk with that in that environment. And it was tough. It was a great preparation, because I remember AJ Guyton gave us like 17 in the first half, and he went up the court doing this to the crowd, and literally you could feel the floor shaking. And I'm like, whoa. But it was like, we kind of laughed about it, because we was like, we ready for it, and we ended up getting out of there with a win. I had to work my butt off in the second half to try to help slow him down. But that was tough. Mackey was tough. Minnesota in them good years with Bobby Jackson, the barn is tough to play at. So it does. Of course, in Europe, it's a little smaller. Like I played at Maccabi Tel Aviv in Israel, which hold around 10,000 there, which was solid. But I remember the one really place that stick out to me the most was I played in Turkey, Galatasaray. Raymar Morgan is playing there now, I think, as we speak. But I played there, and I remember we was playing against Fenerbahce. They are already big soccer rivals too.
Yep.
So I remember playing them, And I remember it was crazy. We had to warm up with them because our fans was throwing milk cartons at them, and they like fireworks, and so they couldn't warm up on their own size. So we had to warm up together, which was a first for me. I'm like, this is weird, but I remember that game, and it got so bad because they was firing off like M80 bombs in the gym. It was crazy. So that game, I remember they had to stop the game, and they kicked majority of the fans out. And I remember the game. I remember because I hit a Florida shot, a game-winning shot in that game. And I remember the crowd was waiting on me. And, that's if they lift you on your shoulders. It was like you talking about like 10,000 people. And I was like, whoa, this was scary. So that was the one time where it really, really stuck. My team in Sona, they fans was wild, but they had like 5,000 or 6,000 people, a little smaller, like a high school size gym. And there at that place, because I won a couple of championships there. So I remember we felt so good at home. Mind me, I don't want to get off topic, but I'm still mad about my former teammate, Dwayne Wiley. He was playing at home at the time. We had an over a year win streak at home, and his team came in there to beat me. I ain't like it. But he one of my best friends. I love him to death. He was playing in this team called Falco. Marvin Clark played there too, won a championship. This is crazy how it goes, but we was playing them, and it gets so bad that our fans, we got to put like a hockey glass over the visitors' bench because our fans can't get to them because our fans was wild.
See, that's what I was trying to get at, because we know Mackey and Assembly Hall and all those places get loud, but they're not having to put plexiglass protection or have fans lighting off M80s. It's a different thing over there in some of those leagues. Right.
Because I remember I won the Hungarian Cup in 2007, and I remember you can't do this now. But I remember they was lighting them in the gym. I mean, I wish I could send you guys a link. It was crazy. In the gym, they was lighting them little flare things.
Yeah.
Them are fire hazard. You can't do that. But at the time, we was a lot of TV. We was playing, we winning. Our fans was really doing that inside the gym. And I'm like, that is crazy. But they, of course, times have changed. They're more stricter about it. But that time it was great to be a part of it.
So going back real quickly to the Big Ten experience, then you mentioned Mackey and Assembly Hall and Williams Arena. Would those be which of those in your experience was the toughest place to play in the league?
Yeah, I thought, yeah. Well, at the time, I thought Indiana was tough. Assembly Hall was tough. Well, Mackey is always tough, man. I mean, Mackey always been, and they always play so physical and tough. So it's tough to win at Purdue, tough to win. And to be honest with you, you catch it the right year, everywhere in the Big Ten is tough, to be honest. Because even like I was joking with Jess Settles. He called our last game against Brown. And Jess Settles, we was talking about the battles him and I had. We was talking about the battles we had, because that is crazy. That Turkish team, so you can imagine the conversation we had when I played in Turkey and got a test ride. I played with Roy Harrison, who was at Purdue at the time. And J.R. Cox was at Iowa at the time.
Yep.
So we were always on the same team. So we used to sit at dinner. Of course, we had these Big Ten battles and talk. They talking about the Breslin was tough to play at. But I'm like, man, Mackey Arena, said that's probably the top one. Well, I think for my time, Indiana, is very tough too. Yeah.
Along the same lines, we talked a lot. You remember Scott Skiles, of course, and he seemed right, and he drew energy from the negative energy from fans.
Yeah.
And that was, part of his thing, right? But there are definitely some instances where you go into arenas and there's nobody there, or they're very quiet. Like, we always joke about Bryce Jordan, Penn State, which is kind of like a catacomb, right?
Yeah.
How do you as a player, because you're used to that energy to feed off that even as a visitor, how do you generate that sort of energy when you're in a place that, doesn't have much going on, or, maybe even like these preseason tournaments?
That's tough, because you got to think that's pro basketball too. You got a lot of that NBA arena sometimes, it's quiet in the beginning. Or like even in Europe, you have some moments like that where it's kind of quiet. You play a smaller club that don't have the attraction like that. But to be honest, that's where you want to have player-led teams, though. See, like I was on a part of it, like on both sides. Like I said, coach beginning years going to the NITs and all when we're trying to break through and fight, and we wasn't We wasn't like that at the time to compare to the back end before I left. So it's like I got to see that where it was like that a little bit. Like, we play some teams, the crowd would be okay. It's okay, but it's like, but then when we became, I guess when the 100 or the hunted, when we was becoming 100, that's when teams really like, okay, now regardless of where we go, we knew we had to, and then we lost a tough game at UConn my senior year. But it's just like, that's when you want to have player-led teams, because when you have a player-led team, you get it from within. That's where the family, that's where the me against the world, and we really live that. And that's where it comes in. You're talking about a guy like Mateen Cleaves, Antonio Smith, all them guys like that. Like we brought it from within, and that's what you got to have. And we was able to maintain that, because you got to have a player-led team when it comes from that. And then and it was fortunate with us because we have Coach Izzo being younger and which he still ain't changed at all. But you got Mike Garland, who the same way, Stan, so all our coaches brung it too. So it was easy to be like that. But you got to have it within though, in places like that. Like you said, like Penn State, sometimes the crowd can be, hit or miss, or, whatever you want to call it. You got to have it within. Because those are games where you can, what they call them, trap games. Them are games you get stuck in because you don't got that discipline like that. So you got to have a player-led team.
Turning to coaching now, what you were just talking about raised a question in my mind. You hear Coach Izzo talk a lot about the culture of Michigan State's program. Maintaining it, reestablishing it, all of those things. You were a guy who, as a player, was there in the very beginning of that. You were on the ground floor with some of those guys you just mentioned.
Yes.
Now with you as a coach, and I know Coach Montgomery obviously played at MSU too, but he didn't play under Izzo as a head coach.
Right.
Do you feel like that maybe, that's got to get transmitted? And I know that the ideal always seems to be, well, you want your older players, your veterans, to transmit the culture to the younger guys. But you seem to be in kind of a unique spot because you played in this program, in Tom Izzo's program. Do you feel like that gives you maybe a little different kind of insight when dealing with the current players and trying to get the program fundamentals established with the young guys especially?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, because to be real with you, I'm actually getting goosebumps with you saying that, to be honest. Because to be real with you, it's, you don't want them to take that stuff for granted. No, they wouldn't. Right. They never have to experience what I've experienced, of course, but I always say some things, reinventing the wheel and all of that. No. Hey, what we build and what we start and what we're on, it came from someplace. And don't take that for granted. Because, it wasn't always like this. You know what I mean? Right. It wasn't. It was like we go 17 or 18 and 12, coach, second year coaching. We get into the tournament now in today's culture. We wasn't Michigan State back then. So we took pride in that, to break through like that. Coach takes pride in that. So my thing is, I don't like these young guys that's in their window right now. I always say a player is in their window right now when they're in college. You're in your playing window. Don't take none of that for granted, that you're in your window and, and all of the stuff that we've accomplished. Don't just think it's just going to be given to you. You know what I mean? It was earned to get here, and y'all got to keep that going. You understand what I'm saying? Because it wasn't like that. We had to earn it. We literally had to grind, like you said, from bottom up to grind them hours of practices and 3 hours long. They couldn't even imagine it. So it's like, don't take that for granted. Approach it different. Approach it and approach it to the point like this, where it ain't just about y'all names on the back of the jersey. Old school saying, which is the truth, it's always about the front of the jersey. And I'm always about them on that one. Like, hey, y'all got to really be about this, because at the end of the day, when the smoke clear, to being honest with you, like you said, I played a lot of places. All these pros played, NBA guys. That this moment, you in this moment right here, you ain't gonna ever probably stick in this situation like this when you at a certain place for a certain amount of years, 4 or 5 years, how long you here. Now with COVID, it could be 6 years, but I'm just saying, you're in a spot for this long, you gotta embrace that. You gotta, because you're gonna catch yourself coming back here, and you're gonna want that same culture and that same environment. You want things to be carried on. So I'm big on that.
Yeah, I mean, the name of our podcast is The Final Four is Not on the Schedule, which is something I've heard Tom Izzo say many times, because the fans especially start believing that, oh yeah, every March.
Right.
I mean, look, I'm old enough as a fan. I remember the 1980s where we went to the NCAA tournament 2 out of 10 years.
Right.
That's the real world.
That's the real world, man. And this is not fantasy. That much respect for it, because people don't understand that grind. That's why I always say I seen the NIT in the Final Four my year. That's the blessing, because I know, dealing with the players, what you're talking about. I know when you're cutting a corner with me. I've been on teams like that, but also been on teams that, you held each other accountable too. Not to say our older teams, my early years, we just didn't know how to go about it. You understand what I'm saying? We didn't know. And it was a little selfish, and everybody wanted to establish themselves. Whereas on the back end of my career, when everybody was held accountable, everybody was together. And that's what he's always been about. That's when it all happened. You know what I mean? So I know, dealing with these players, like, no, y'all can't run one on me. I've been high. I know how it goes.
Well, I mean, you obviously, you finished playing professionally, and then you went into coaching. I mean, a lot of these guys, you look at grad assistants on the bench. You're a grad assistant. You're kind of an old guy.
Yeah, I was.
As a grad assistant,
yes,
right?
I was, man. I was.
And so what made you decide to do that and to transition? Did you kind of look around and think, boy, I'm like 20 years behind these guys? Or, I mean, how did you kind of approach that?
Well, I mean, it's funny, because Coach and I had a conversation. I was, it was one of them years where I went later in Europe, and I was able to come to a football game and stuff. So he kind of, we talked about it at the football game. We sitting in the crowd. We kind of briefly talked about it, and he thought I should get into it. Don't be playing just to be playing. But basketball, my passion, all the injuries I had, I just had a lot of basketball left in me. So it's like, no, I'm not gonna play just to play. But he put that in my head. But I always kind of knew, I used to, everybody train kids. I started training kids. I used to do free camps and stuff in the early 2000s, because I was always my way of giving back to the inner city in Grand Rapids, because, just said basketball is always a draw. So I always would do something free for the kids. So I knew I didn't want to, I know training was a way to get to the kids. I knew I just didn't want to train. I wanted to be more impactful, so that's why when Coach, when we had that talk 2012 or something, that stuck in my head. And I was just like, you know what? And things happened. I ended up getting injured my last year, but it just all lined up. It all lined up. So I was like, you know what? I had a good run. I could have tried to push it, but I had a great run, like I said, 15 years. Let me just go ahead. How things lined up, talking to Coach, then talking to Coach Izzo, and talking to Coach Garland. I was just like, it was just a great opportunity for me to do it. I said, let me just go ahead and get into this, because, I mean, this is something that I know I wanted to do when I was young. My mom knew I wanted to be a coach, because I used to do a little bit of it, like summertime in high school. I joke around with kids and coach them and have a good time with them. So it was always in me, and it just lined up. As soon as I got done playing, it lined up perfectly.
So as we talked about at the outset of the episode, you started after your grad assistant time at Michigan State, you started your assistant coaching tenure with several years at Western, and then came back to the alma mater this summer. What are some of and I know you're only 6 months into this stint, but what's the thing or things that stand out most to you in terms of differences between coaching at those two levels, at the MAC mid-major level and now at the Big Ten? Because I think people might think that it's harder at the higher level, but there are challenges, I know, big challenges when you're working at a smaller program. So what are the differences that stick out in your mind between coaching at those two places?
No, great question, great point, because, when you're at a mid-major level, you don't have the manpower or the staff that you have. So it's like when you're at a mid-major level, when I'm at Western Michigan, shout out to Coach Bates and Coach Hawkins giving me the first opportunity to do it. And especially dealing with Coach Bates, who he put a lot more on my plate. So now when you at the mid-major level, you really got to worry about the study table hours. You got to worry about the care hours, like how many times, what can you do on the court, off the court. You got to worry about the equipment. You got a lot of things that's on your plate at the mid-major level because you don't have the manpower. Whereas now at Michigan State, to what the program has built to, it's just, you have a lot of people, like you said, like Austin Thorne, video coordinator, is great. You got a lot of people where most importantly, have a lot of different eyes. So for example, when, we finna play a school or team, or say we play in Kentucky or wherever, you have so many different eyes, because we got grad assistants that play, we got managers that know, we got, like I said, video coordinators, you got all the you got so many eyes that can view this game and view things that some that say if it's my scout that I didn't see, you're able to pick up on that. You know what I mean? But whereas you at the mid-major level, you kind of got to do it on your own. You kind of got to, you trading on your own, which is good or bad. But on the great thing is it helps you grow as a coach because it gives you more responsibility.
Right. So you felt prepared when you stepped up to Michigan State because you had to do all those things.
Right. But also, of course, nowadays, the pressure heightens now. You know what I mean? So you're talking about these the aircraft carrier games and the pressure games like that. But yeah, it did a good job of getting me prepared for this.
Speaking of the aircraft carrier, what was it like coaching there? Obviously you didn't have an experience like that as a player or even as a coach at Western.
Right. Because they did it earlier on. But you're talking about, that's kind of like how can I put that? Say a bucket list thing, or that's just something that you can't even imagine, man. Like I said, like those are things where I could soak up forever. You know what I mean? Like I could live. That's going to something people want to talk about forever. Because I did get a little chilly at night. You know what I mean? But that was incredible. You talking about, of course, it was smaller crowd, but you can feel the intensity. You can see how they had things set up, man. It was like you riding up on a little elevator type thing where it can hold so many. It was incredible, man. That was an incredible experience that that was priceless. It really was. Man.
We had Mike Garland on a while ago, and he was talking about coaching and fixing mechanics and like with shooting, for instance, and how to, is that something that you can do mid-season, or is that, or something like fixing shooting mechanics? Is that something you kind of have to do on off season? Because, we've seen a big jump with Hogard from last year to this year. And then people talk about, Holloman's trying to figure things out. I don't know if it's, a confidence issue or if it's a technique issue, but are those things like in these 3 weeks you kind of have before you get into the thick of the rest of the Big Ten season? Is this the chance to do that sorts of things?
Yeah, it is. You try to jab at it, get it in as much as you can at these times of years. But you had a good point. I'll call them bank deposits. Bank deposits are done in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Bank deposits. Because there's not too much going to change during the year because it's games. Even then, you got to rest your body. You got film. You got so much stuff going on that it's hard to change that during the year. But your bank deposits, you better make sure you put them bank deposits in over them summer months, to April, to May, to June, July, or put them bank deposits in. And it's funny, you bring somebody like AJ Hogard who put a lot of bank deposits in. He worked hard. He's worked hard on it. So I still got work to do, but he's worked hard. And I'm glad you guys like yourself are able to see his growth, whereas Trey Holloman is working hard. He's going to, it's hard to see it now because you see him every day or he's at it every day. But, it's going to be a time to show his time is going to come. You just got to keep putting them bank deposits in, as I call them, because you're going to cash in on them sooner or later. And AJ's starting to do that right now, which is I think that's the greatest thing about being in coaching, to be honest, where you're able to see the growth of now as a player in person and young men. That's priceless to me too. That's why I know for a coach, I see why he gets emotional a lot of times. Like when I got the Western Michigan job, he teary-eyed, he red-faced, he happy for me. Because you just see the growth of He's seeing me take a step. I'm about to step out. When you see somebody like AJ Hogarth who couldn't shoot, now you see him grow. I just think that's great when a player get the fruits of their labor.
And so much of that, I think sometimes fans think that you guys are with them every minute of every day in the off season. And it's not like, by NCAA rule, it's not like that.
Right.
So it really comes down to these guys being self-motivated, right? They've got to want it.
Yes. Player-led teams. What we talked about earlier when you asked the question about playing in, environments that may not be like the Braves, you got that. Those are all things about a player-led team. Our coach is always big on bringing somebody with you. Because I'm trying to turn a corner as a player, and I'm going to the Braves at 1 a.m. It's summertime, midnight, and I'm going by myself. And Morris Peterson was my roommate. I'm telling myself, like, hey man, after a while, I'm like, hey man, you got to start coming to the gym with me, man. You know what I'm saying? He like, no, man, trying to get him out of his way. He's like, hey, man, you got to start coming to the gym with me. First of all, it was hard to go by myself. But second of all, I was like, we got to start getting better. And it's just like you said, bringing somebody with you, them a team with us, and everybody going. But it's like, coach is big on bringing somebody else with you. So when you go into the gym like that, like, to your point, you can't be there by yourself. Shout out to the managers that do a great job. But it's like, even then, it's like they got classes, they got things they got to do. It's too much, and we're not allowed to do certain things. So they got to be holding themselves accountable. They got to, and that's what we built on.
Speaking of, before we turn to this year's team, one more question I wanted to ask you about coaching. Now that you're heavily involved in recruiting, well, you've been involved in recruiting your time at Western, but now doing it at Michigan State. I think a lot of times you hear, and everybody does this, not just fans of sports teams, talk about, kids today, they're so different than we were when we were growing up. They're lazy. They don't want to work hard. All these things kind of we were just talking about, right? Do you see any fundamental difference between the guys you're recruiting now and who you were, or the guys you knew when you were in high school and being recruited? Is there any difference at all? Really?
Yeah, no. I always say you can't reinvent the wheel of things. Like you said, recruiting, at this level, it's like this. Like, yeah, just nowadays, it's easier to get recruited now, if that makes sense, because of social media and the platform you have. It's easier. Because my day was like, going to 5-star camp was a big. Our thing was going to camps back then. 5-star, right. ABCD camp. Robert Traylor, we won ABCD. It's like you got to go to camps. And back then AAU was kind of like AAU. And what I'm saying is, you had to finish, like, for us to go to the nationals in AAU in high school, you got to finish the top 3 teams in your state. So you know what I mean? So whereas now in AAU, it don't really matter. If you got the funds, or you got things going, you can get to it, you can play AAU. So it's like, I just think it's easier to get recruited now. Get to this level, it's still hard, of course, but it's easy to get recruited. But to be honest, to your point, it ain't that much difference, man. As far as, players are more opinionated. They have options. Their opinions are more heard. Whereas in our day, we didn't know any better. So if you tell us to run through this brick wall, we're gonna try to do it. And which nowadays, these players, you do have players that would do that, but some players may ask the question, like, why do I gotta run through that brick wall? What is that doing for me? You know what I'm saying? Then with the NIL stuff, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like, you got a lot of things that factor in with this now that I couldn't even imagine dealing with it. You know what I mean? But I think, honestly, like I say, can't really invent the wheel, because, a good player is a good player, and, baggage is baggage. You got to try to weed through that. But I just think nowadays players got a little bit more of a say so to what they, because, like I said, with the transfer stuff and all of that, everybody, they ain't happy. Whereas in my day, you probably get 20 transfers in a year. Whereas nowadays, you're getting thousands of transfers because, players, are able to have an opinion or want something. Whereas I think in my day, we did try to fight through some things sometimes. We tried to fight through to, we weren't, I say you're trying to run from it. We just didn't feel we had that wasn't an option for us.
Right.
Whereas now they have the option now.
I was watching an interview with Coach Izzo this week that he did, and he was talking about when I think this was a conversation he said he had with Magic, where he said he asked Magic, did Magic think he could coach in the NBA? And he said, absolutely, because the great ones want to be coached. They want to be held accountable. Yeah. So in that sense, it's probably not any different than it ever was at a fundamental level, right?
Right.
That the guys who really want to be great want that. They want someone to hold them accountable. They want someone to coach them hard.
Yes. That's a good point. I mean, and that's at any level, because that's like always saying your best players, your hardest workers, right?
Right.
They want to be coached that way, and that's where, when you have that, it makes it all easier when you have that. But in a lot of cases, if you don't have it, that's where problems can come in, because now your best players is your laziest player. That can be an issue, because now you got to address his issues, and that's hurting your credibility as a coach with other players. So if your hardest worker is your best player, that's at any level. That makes every coaching job easy.
To that point with the team this year, you mentioned a player-led team. When I've heard Izzo talk or this season, he doesn't seem like he's convinced yet it's a player-led team, but it's getting there, Mm-hmm. Who do you see as emerging leaders in this team? Are they just your seniors, or do you see players kind of stepping up and trying to take over those reins?
Oh, well, no, I mean, yeah, you see it. Like, I know it's been a great lesson for Malik Hall, to the point where first thing first, after I can relate to him as far as like the injury part of things, mm-hmm. where you feel bad, basketball gotten taken away from you, and you realize how bad you miss it. Jay Nakin's out, which I've had the same injury he's had. So it's like you learn to appreciate that. But somebody like Malik Hall, who's seeing things from a different perspective. So he's already doing a pretty good job of speaking up. Now he's gotten better at it. You got AJ Hogarth, who's embracing this role. He's getting better at it. Tyson Walker, better at it. So guys are getting opportunities right now to really, really step up. And like I said, not more on and off the court. Guys are really, this team is really embracing that and understanding you got to have all hands on deck too. But those guys are few that come to my head that really are standing out. Jay Nakins is coming. Guys are buying into new roles, new things, and leadership comes with that. They say AJ's doing it. I said Malik Hall's doing a good job. Joey Hauser's going into that role. So it's a collective thing, but guys are starting to see their worth now on and off the court.
Right now, you're a few days into this, I guess, for lack of a better term, this break. It probably hasn't felt like much of a break for you guys on the staff, because I know you've been out
every day, man. Every day.
And all that. Yeah. But for the team, at least, it's finally an opportunity, over the next 3 weeks, really, to work on themselves. Yes. You're not necessarily game planning all the time. So given that we're in that period, where are the areas that you think it's most important for this team to improve upon as they get into January and back into Big Ten play, where we know it all really matters, every game? Where do the biggest steps need to happen for this group?
First thing on that, the very first thing is health, getting healthy. Yeah. We got to get healthy. So Malik Hall, guys like that, taking care of their bodies. Jay Nakins getting back right. Even little nagging injuries. The main thing is you want to get healthy, because better. It's always better to have available bodies. So that's the first thing about getting healthy, and then also continue to work on ourselves. Like you're talking about ourselves, so you're talking about our offense. Things. Getting better with that chemistry. Because now, you implement new guys coming back and all of that. So offensively, taking advantage of that. But just the overall thing, though, because, it's like I said, all hands on that, we can't forget now our defense has been very good. Can it get better? Yes. Been very good for us. Offensively, been pretty good. Had some good moments. We can shoot the ball. We can work on things. But like you said, we just overall just working on ourselves. The first thing that comes to mind for me is the health part. Getting guys healthy. Because I think if we get guys healthy, I think with the balance that we have, we got great guard play. We got, the way Monty has grown as a player. Then you can say you got veterans like Joey Hauser, guys like Malik Hall who can do, like guys like Pierre Brooks playing into their role. Trey Holloman's giving things, Jackson. So we got all hands on deck. But I think it's just health and just continue to work on everything about what we do. Because we can't put nothing past, we can't take nothing for granted.
As Eric mentioned a few minutes ago, we did an episode after the Penn State game with Coach Garland, and we were talking about rebounding. And I said, as I'm watching it this year, especially offensive rebounding, it doesn't look the way we're used to seeing it from Tom Izzo teams. And I said, is that, like a lot of times when you're watching on television and you see a shot go up on the screen, there's no other Michigan State jerseys on the screen where we're used to seeing 4 to the boards, Yeah. And I asked him, is that just a conscious decision that coach has made? And he said, absolutely not. No. That was one thing he assured us was going to get worked on over December.
Oh, yeah. It's funny you say that because Jay Nakins goes out yesterday in practice and get 5 offensive rebounds. But it's just like, of course we're jabbing at it, but like you think, going back to what I was saying, I just said Jay Nakins, he's been hurt a lot.
Right. And Malik Hall's been out. Those 2 are your best.
Yeah. Pierre Brooks is understanding a new role. It's about a growth. So we gotta take advantage of our time with that. Like somebody like a Jason Whitens, who I coached at Western, that's what he does. He gonna always give us that. You know what I mean? But no, it's just, you're right though. I mean, we're working at, like I said, always room for, but we're trying to work at that. We got to get back to that, which we never stop. But it's like the lineups we've had. Now we went smaller with Tyson Walker. Tyson Walker, he's never went to the offensive glass before. AJ Hogarth never went to, so it's just like we had to learn different lineups. You know what I'm saying? So now we're figuring it out because, like I said, most importantly though, we're starting to get back healthy. And we can have the bodies to do what the guys are accustomed to seeing from Michigan State.
This is a fun team, and I think, Rod, I both had pretty high expectations for the team, which wasn't most people. I think, Michigan State was picked 5th or 6th in the league, and I think we saw, really good guard play. They're going to be, a tough matchup for most teams. And to your point where you mentioned earlier, it's not a team that you can just roll the ball out and you're going to just overwhelm teams. You have to play well, connected basketball, both ends of the floor, for sure. Yeah. I think the team's seen that a couple times this season when that didn't happen.
Right.
How do you feel coaching this team versus when you were at Western? I mean, does it feel like the stakes are more but you can, there's so much more than you can accomplish? I mean, can you just like feel that when you're coaching?
I mean, yeah. Well, for me, my passion ain't going nowhere. So it's like, whether I was at Western or anywhere else. So, the passion, especially with the staff and all of that, it's just, now you just see, like I said, the stakes is, everything's risen a little bit. And it's just like, now, I know coming back here, guys like AJ Hogarth, guys like Malik Hall, guys like Joey Hall, all these guys, they feel like they got something to prove. They got something to prove because, they trying to establish something. They trying to get things back. They ain't had a year they wanted to have last year. So now with this group, I get the vibe and a sense of urgency to where everybody, they realizing that they need everybody. They more together than what they're together. And they know that, we need everybody to keep this chain moving. And they all understand that. And you can sense that because it's like, you have times where, tough battles in Villanova at halftime, they coming together for each other. They rallying for each other. Like, I just think those things are beautiful to see when you see them guys doing that. So I think these guys are really just growing right in front of our eyes, to be honest, as a team. Every day they're growing. And I love it.
Yeah, I guess getting at that maybe a little bit further, you start the season, second game, you take Gonzaga right down to the wire under weird conditions. And, winning or losing that, to me as a fan at least, that didn't matter as much as, hey, they looked good. They played well against a good team. And then you go out the next game, you handle Kentucky in overtime, but you get it done. Then you beat Villanova. Maybe it gets a little tighter than you wanted at the end, but you get it done against a great program. So you got to be feeling good about where the team is at that point, and then the injuries start to hit. And you kind of fought through that. This might be a hard one to answer just because of all those things that have happened even over the last 6 weeks. But do you feel like, based on how you saw it in October, do you think the team is right about where you thought they'd be at this point? A little behind maybe because of the injuries, or ahead of where you thought? How do you feel you're sitting right now?
That's a great question. It's kind of hard to say that because it's just because it's saying it because I like to know how we are. We was fully stacked with the deck.
Right.
League Hall. Jay Naked's playing. Everybody's on deck. So it's like, because me, the player me, the former player me, cause like, man, we was all healthy, man, we'd be 10-1 right now. You know what I mean? Or, you know what I mean? But then you look at it too, it's like, will we be 10-1? You never know, because will we have battling issue? So I try to stay away from that. It's just the fact that right now, me personally, I like where we're heading as the, win or lose. I like this. I like where we're headed as a group. Like you said, I just like to hear the culture staying intact and steady growing. So, because I think when that's intact, I think the rest will take care of itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and maybe the other thing too, which again occurs to me watching it from a distance, is maybe the silver lining in the injuries. And no fan wants to hear about this, and the guys on the team probably don't want to hear about it either. But maybe the silver lining is you've had to give minutes because you didn't have any other option to guys who wouldn't have played as much. Yeah. So maybe in February, you were talking about summertime, putting those bank deposits in. Maybe that's what happens in the end.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, like going back when I was a grad assistant, right? When we beat Carolina and when we won the PK 80.
Right.
And the game, I think it was against DePaul or UConn, I think it's DePaul, where Connor George comes in and gets like 6 offensive rebounds or something.
Right.
I'm saying an example, like, for example, Jason Whitens against Portland. Yep. He kept like 2 or 3 balls. We win that game with a close game, but he kept 2 balls alive. We hit 2 threes on them. It's just like, that was big. But it's just like you're saying, to the point where these times, Pierre Brooks extending minutes, Trey Holloman getting minutes, these times gotta help us on the back end when you talk about getting ready for Big Ten play, because now we have quality bodies and bodies that we can lean on and players that, been battle tested already.
Right.
I mean, so that's a great point, and that's been important for us. So it can be a blessing in disguise.
I think we'll wrap it up there. Coach Kelley, thanks so much for being on the show and joining us. And best of luck to you against Oakland, and then Buffalo, and then when it gets hot and heavy in January and February in the Big Ten season.
Heavy. 9 games in January. Ooh.
Are you? And I know you guys, we're seeing pictures of you all over the place recruiting. Is that pretty much your 6 days a week that you're on the recruiting trail or talking to players? And
if we can fit it in, you got to try to squeeze it in, and and try to get there. But yeah, we be busy, man. We at it. I'm actually getting ready. We got to figure out where we headed next. We come together as a staff and think about what's the best places to go. So I'm about to be on the road soon.
Well, I appreciate you squeezing us in. Hey,
anytime, man. Hopefully we can do it again. So I enjoyed myself, man. Hope you guys had a
absolutely.
Good time.
Thanks a lot, Coach. It was great.
Yeah. All right, you guys take care.
Until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule.
Yes,
Go
sir.
Green.
All right, now. Take care.
Hey, it's Kevin Hart with my pal Catherine O'Hara.
No, I'm more of a bestie.
Kinda, sorta. Right now, we're cash backing on everything we need for the holidays with Chase Freedom Unlimited.
I got some ornaments and lights.
'Tis the season to cash back.
And lots of wrapping paper.
Maybe you're cash backing on a present bought for me?
About that.
I know you're kidding.
Am I?
How do you cash back? Learn more at chasefreedom.com. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Restrictions and limitations apply. Cards are issued by JPMorgan Chase Bank, N.A., member FDIC.